just want to make one correction, one fact check regarding Lara Trump's statement about how women are experiencing the lowest unemployment rate during the Trump administration. That's actually not true. So according to PolitiFact, the data show one period with a lower unemployment rate for women, a 12-month period in 1952 and 1953, that's about 66 years ago, which qualifies as nearly 70 years ago. And by the way, I mean, you can't, right now unemployment is record high because so many people, tens of millions of Americans, have been laid off, furloughed due to the pandemic, which Trump has handled poorly. But even if we were to give him credit with where the unemployment rate for women was prior to the economy collapsing in response to the pandemic, what Lara Trump said there was not true. I also want to note the unemployment rate for women has been falling, again, before the pandemic. Since 2010, when President Barack Obama was president, the unemployment rate for women fell from 8.7% in October of 2010 to 4.7% when Obama left office in January 2017, a decline of 4 percentage points or almost half. Look, I mentioned that not because I think Obama was like this incredible, fantastic president who did incredible, fantastic things for women, but for Trump to take credit for what the previous president had started and succeeded in is just laughable and ridiculous. Trump, as we all know, doesn't actually care about how Americans are doing, what their wages look like. Every time he's spoken about how great the economy is, he's specifically talking about the stock market, which is inflated through the Federal Reserve printing money and handing it over to corporations, including right now during the pandemic. Corporations are doing great. Silicon Valley is doing fantastic. Everything is wonderful for them. But on the ground, when it comes to average Americans, we are suffering. Many of us are jobless. Many of us don't know what we're gonna do because Congress is feckless and has failed to pass another round of stimulus. So that's what the situation is on the ground. And I just wanna make those corrections before we talk about how it is that people like Lara Trump and the Trump campaign can incessantly argue that the unrest that we're experiencing right now would be something that we'd experience under a Biden presidency. Like, so let's talk about that, Emma, because it was something that you brought up earlier that I think is an interesting topic.
Yeah, let me just make one quick point based on what you just said there. When we're not talking about the politics of class, I don't care anymore. Like this stuff about women and a woman, female director of the CIA, Gina Haspel, who tortured everybody and broke the law and droned kids. Like, oh my God, can you imagine if we had a substantive Democratic nominee who talked about class and Medicare for all and policies that would affect people on a daily quotidian basis? This would be so marginal and seem so silly when they have Lara Trump, the child of the president's spouse or the president's child's spouse, coming on here to talk about that. Like, if you contrasted all of this with substance, it would be meaningless. But that's not what this is. Instead, it's just, two pageant shows basically. But I'm sorry, Anna, what was your initial prompt about?
I want to stay on that because I think that's such a great point, and I really hope our audience is smart. I hope you guys like follow us in what we're saying, because equality for people of all backgrounds, all genders, all races is important, right? Equality of opportunity. But I think what you're getting at, and I totally side with you on this. As a woman, I'm personally tired of being used as a political prop, when in reality, like, I just want to be able to pay my bills. I want to be able to know that there is a robust social safety net that my taxpayer money goes toward. Like, I don't want to hear platitudes, and I don't care about like, ooh, we have the first woman this and the first woman that. Great, that's awesome. But like, I don't really care about the aesthetics of change. I care about the substance of change. And I'm real tired of being used as a political prop for either political party. What are you gonna do to change the material conditions that single mothers are experiencing right now? What are you gonna do to change the material conditions of women? What are you gonna do to change the material conditions of people, right? Like, that's really at the heart of where a lot of our heartache and sorrow comes from. And so part of the problem with, and I hate using this phrase because it makes you think of horrible, dishonest people like Dave Rubin and Ben Shapiro. And I don't agree with them at all on anything, okay? But the one thing that I do want to say is that we need to be careful in believing messaging coming from Republicans, yes, that's obvious, but also from Democrats who want to try to like pawn off like this visual of change by putting women or putting Black people or putting Hispanics or putting whoever, gay people, whatever, any disenfranchised group, putting them in any position to make a point about like, look at what we did for women. Okay, but like Hillary Clinton being president would do nothing to change the quality of women's lives in America. I mean, it would be a better situation than what we're experiencing under Trump, no question. But I hate how everything goes to, okay, let's focus on like the identity stuff, right? Because that allows them to make it appear as if they're like pushing for change. But when it comes to the things that actually materially improve the lives of these groups of people, they're not willing to do what they're supposed to do. They're just not willing to do it because that means they would need to challenge corporate power. They're not willing to do that.
That's all it comes down to. I couldn't have said it better. You're absolutely right. And again, the left does itself no favors by pretending identity politics isn't a thing and pretending cancel culture, which even is like less of a phenomenon, but we saw it with Alex Morse. There are ways you can critique the left and the fact that there is this moral purity that now seeps over into the right. Like they're basically using identity politics. Lara Trump just did it there. And using women as props. And I think part of what we were talking about earlier, there's a huge generational divide in who this appeals to. Like my mom, for example, would be like, oh, that's nice, like the woman stuff. You know, oh, a woman's in charge of this part of the government. That's great. Or I don't care. And I don't think anyone in our generation cares.
Well, I think Kamala Harris is actually a really great example of what we're trying to talk about, right? Because so when Kamala Harris was a prosecutor in California, she did things that we disagree with as progressives, right? So she had an opportunity to hold cops in California accountable for brutality and excessive force. She chose not to. She was boastful about her policy of criminalizing parents who had children who missed too many days of school. She was against marijuana legalization. She laughed about it. I bring up all these things because the explanation that we got from the Democratic Party was, well, what could she do? She was a Black woman in this system, in this position of power, yes, but as a Black woman, she had no choice but to play ball. Okay, fine. I guess that's the explanation, that's the excuse, but so how are things gonna be different if we have a Black woman as vice president? Because I agree, I like the representation. I think that's great, but it shouldn't start and stop at the aesthetics of change. What's gonna be done systemically to improve the country, to improve the material conditions of Black people in this country, to improve the material conditions of everyone in this country who's really feeling the economic strain of the neoliberal policies that have run amok for decades now. What's gonna be done? Right? So it's not about like, oh, I don't care about representation. No, I do care. I think that's great. But that's not even half of the equation. And I worry that people get tricked into the aesthetics of change without actually getting a commitment from our politicians that it's gonna go beyond the aesthetics, that we're actually gonna get change systemically and materially in our lives. Because we had a biracial president, and I remember voting for him in 2008, and I was excited about it. And to be quite honest with you, yes, it was exciting to vote in favor of a biracial president. But it was also exciting because I genuinely believed in his message of hope and change. And we didn't get that, right? So,
well, why didn't you vote for Hillary Clinton then? I was in the same boat as you. I wasn't old enough to vote when Obama was up in 2008, but
oh, okay, you're way young. Okay, got it. I'm just kidding.
How dare? But I mean, I remember having this conversation and thinking this way all the time. Like I would talk to people, and they were like, well, Hillary Clinton's better for women. I'm like, why? Everything this guy is saying makes way more sense to me. And the war is the craziest, most horrific, immoral thing I've ever seen in my life. And she voted for that. And so how many times do these politicians think they can trick us? We have the internet. I'm sick of it. I'm really sick of it. They really think so little of us. I mean, the Democrats especially. The Democrats think nothing of their entire constituency. They think they can trick you over and over again with substanceless drivel, and it drives me insane because we are all angry. Most of the Democratic base, the youth, the future of their party's angry. But okay, we're talking about, maybe it was earlier today or on the show yesterday, I forget, Trump's inability to see beyond the next few weeks and his short-term thinking. What about the Democrats' short-term thinking? They're kicking their entire base in the teeth for a win that's gonna dissipate in, I don't know, if Biden wins, how long do we hold on to the Senate? How long do we hold on to the House? Not long, in my view, not long. Same deal as Obama, just short-term gains and let Republicans win 75 to 80% of the battles until all our social safety nets are done and the country just collapses into the earth. I mean, I don't really know what to say about it at this point. So
yeah, I just hate that we had, and look, if Bernie was elected, that's not the end all be all. That's one politician, right? So I think it is very important that we're seeing all of these congressional races won by progressives, true progressives who have basically given corporate PAC money a giant middle finger. I'm so proud of these candidates.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.